Hey Stan, could you come help me for a minute? I'm out here. So why can't I get to that?
So what?
This, which is
What are you trying to do, Zoom?
join, yeah. Thought I had joined. Have they just not started the meeting yet?
I don't think they have. Time is it? It's 8:17. You want your video on?
Do I what?
Do you want your video and your sound on?
Just wanted to test just a mic check. Jeff and Mike, are you able to speak?
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. And Mike,
Oh,
Morning, Howard.
morning. Okay. Okay, we'll start the meeting. Go ahead then.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the February 2024 Bicycle, Pedestrian and Traffic Safety Meeting. I'd like to begin with our call to order and roll call. I am Ed Holland, I am chair.
Angela Hay.
Yep.
Caroline Vertonghen.
Kevin Welch.
Okay, and I would like to make one note that a lot of us have a crunch in time today, and there will be a firm adjournment of this meeting at 9:15. So thank you for that. What would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Howard Young, Town of Patola Valley Public Works Director. And I also have in the crowd here, Paul Krupker, our consultant traffic engineer.
Thank you. And Paul, if you would like to, you're welcome to join us on the dais as part of the panel today, or speak at the microphone when the time is appropriate. Thank you. Item 2 on our agenda is to open the floor for any oral communications for items not on the agenda. So if anybody has anything either via Zoom or in the committee, then please go ahead.
I do, Janet Smith.
Yes, go ahead, please.
So my name is Janet Smith. My husband and I live in Portola Valley Ranch, and I've noticed, particularly last year, that when the emergency gate is open between Valley Oak and Los Trancos, if, for instance, a tree is down and so people from Los Trancos area can't get out, the speed at which they drive through the ranch on Valley Oak is excessive. And a lot of the time, they don't seem to know which way to turn when they come out onto Valley Oak. Many of them turn right, which is just a dead end. So I'm hoping that when that gate is open, we can put up some type of signage that would direct them to the left as a way out, and also remind them of a speed limit, and also remind people driving through, even though they might not know where they are in particular, that this is, the school is very close by, there are children riding bikes, there are children walking. It just really concerns me that I would say they're driving, many of them, in excess of 40 miles an hour.
Thank you. That does sound something we should look into. Howard, do you have any comment on that from a public works perspective?
Yeah, this situation occurs potentially once or twice a year, maybe. It's when Los Trancos roads floods or there's a blockage there, and there is a gate between Los Trancos and Valley Oak. I don't know if everyone's aware of where it is.
Yes, I'm very well.
So to service those coming from Blue Oaks or Vista Verde or unincorporated San Mateo area that need that, certain individuals have combinations there to come through when that's blocked. Once again, this happens maybe once or twice a year, if that. And we have left signs there, and we could continue to, there's a detour sign that we've placed in the bushes, and we could also put a, a left turn only sign in the bushes over there, so that when the volunteers do go out and do open that gate, the signs are just there in the bushes, and they could just pull it out. We can look into it, but I think permanent signage, we'll have to see if we need that 365 days a year. If, this is only being used on an emergency, speed and a no left turn sign. But once again, I see these as when it happens, a detour is needed, and it's no different than any detour signs that you've seen out when law enforcement or the fire department of its public works detours a road. Those signs are needed when the detour happens versus the signs.
I also I spoke with Mary Hefty about this, and her immediate thought was that if there was an emergency evacuation, say a fire, that in that case, signage would be at either something that's just put up at that time or something that stays up would be valuable.
But at this point, I think since it's all communications and we can't act on anything, I think we'll put it in consideration. Thank you for bringing up an oral communications, and then I will talk to the chair about it.
Yeah, we have worked on this before.
Yeah, and with the committee's agreement, that's something we can add for review and put on the future agendas. So
I would say speeding on Valley Oak is independent of whether the gate is open. It only makes there more people. There's always speeding on Valley Oak.
All right, thank you. We'll take that under advisement and watch out for that on future committee agendas. I think that's something worth discussing. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Do we have any other public comments before we move into the main meeting agenda? I don't see any hands up. Thank you. Item 3 would be to move on to approval of our minutes. I have the November 1st and December 6th meeting minutes here for approval. I move that we approve them as submitted.
I
Does anybody have
second.
comments on the minutes? Caroline, you have a comment?
Is this November or December?
November.
I approve it.
Okay.
I approve that.
So show of hands to approve the minutes, I think is what we do. I think we have. Caroline, do you show a hand to approve the minutes?
She just said she
So,
approved
yep,
it.
okay, thank you. I'm not sure the procedure, so please bear with me. And moving on to December 6th, 2023 meeting minutes, I propose that we accept those.
I second that.
Is
I
there
have a
comment
question.
before we-
I have a
you
comment,
have a
yeah.
comment?
On page 3, I just want to clarify where it says it's about the fourth line. Caroline was concerned about crossing guards at the crosswalks. I have questions about the crossing guards, and I'm very much in favor of it. And then later on, where my questions are. It's because we don't know who's funding them, and it's been, there's no clear answer there. So if we can correct that I am, that I have questions about crossing guards.
I don't write everything in the minutes, and
Okay.
it's just, it wastes so much of my time to make that kind of correction. I refuse to do it. You-
Okay. As long as the members heard my comments. Thank you.
Okay, so if we can have a show of hands on approval for those minutes. I approve. The comment is noted, Caroline, and we will revisit this, I'm sure. Thank you. Moving on to item 4, I see Sergeant Taylor is with us today for the sheriff's report. Go ahead, please, Patrick. Thank you for the submission well
Morning.
ahead of time this month.
Yeah, good morning. I was sorry to log in this morning. We have the collisions. You can see, because of the holidays and we really didn't do the second meeting, I just put all the data into 2 for both months of November and December into one report. You can see there's 1 accident that occurred at Alpine Road and Walking Road. It involved a bicyclist who went off the roadway. So minor injuries involved in that accident. And then we have the regular citations. I put that into a spreadsheet this time to kind of give you, because I know last time we were discussing about location of the incidents involved. I figured it'd just be easier to put it in the spreadsheet than it would be to do it the way we were doing it before. This way you have locations for all the citations we did. I removed all the data that would possibly show people's personal information, those were cited. But you can see on here, a lot of it Alpine and Portola Road. We have had a significant number of increase in citations since we've been able to do the, people have been out there writing tickets as asked. And also do some of the survey stuff that we've been able to do. The parking citations do the same Excel, and you can kind of see where those main areas were. You know, Willowbrook is one of the main areas, and that 4,000 block of the Alpine Road. For the bicyclists, I think that park in those areas, or walk, or hikers that walk in those areas. And then I gave the annual stats for the year for Portola Valley. For 2023, 136 total citations. For those are the moving citations, 76 parking citations for a total of 212. 14 of those citations were bicycle related. Then accidents, we had 14 total accidents. 5 of those accidents include bicyclists for the year. That's all I
Okay.
have.
Thank you. I do appreciate the change in format of the reporting. I think that does give us more detail to work from. So thank you for changing.
Yeah, is
changing
that,
and adding the
is
extra
that helpful
detail.
for the people who are asking for it? I don't remember exactly who was asking. Does that answer the question they were asking, I guess?
Yeah, it is for me. I'd like the other committee members to speak for themselves.
Yes, I think it was very helpful. What I did notice, though, on the parking, out of 2 months, there were only 3 days, in fact, in which people cited people. You know, it looks like there were a lot of parking citations, but some were within minutes of each other, which means that really, I don't think the sheriff's deputies are out there very often looking to cite people.
Well, the, just for information, there's one deputy assigned to the town of Portola Valley pays for one deputy. And there's one CSO during day shift that works the entire North Fair Oaks and Portola Valley Woodside area. And that CSO has citations all over. CSO stands for Community Service Officer. So that person works in North Fair Oaks where they do citations down there. They work in Emerald Hills, they work in Portola Valley and Woodside to assist. So it's probably why you don't see, you know, you see a bunch of citations all together at one time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline.
I was going to make the same comment. So when we look at these citations, we have November 12th, we have December 9th, and then one, the 16th. Is this based on people who call in, or is this just, it happened to be that these are the days that they patrol the roads?
No, it's not based on the call in. This is when the CSO may have time, the community service officer or the deputy may get out there a chance to actually write citations in those areas, because they are serving multiple areas, like the person who is assigned to Woodside and Portola Valley. We have 2 deputies assigned to those locations every day and for every shift. And they patrol all of Woodside and all of Portola Valley together as their cover units. So one, that's part of it. The other part is the community service officers who are parking enforcement for the county. There's one of them for the entire headquarters bureau for each team. So that they were writing tickets in, like I said, they're writing tickets in West Menlo Park, they're writing tickets in North Fair Oaks, they're, you know, conducting tow operations all over the whole county. So it's not, we don't have the availability to have that person everywhere at all times. So when they get out there, they try to make the best of the time that they have when they're there.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, because I think a lot of people understand the way that our contract reads or has been described in the past. It's 1 officer per day, you know, covering Woodside and Portola Valley, and you expect to see them around all the time. And so it's not what's the actual practice does not quite meet what some people's reading into that description might be.
I do have a question on.
Caroline, one more comment and I have an online comment. Please, you have a question? Go ahead.
Question is, how do I put this in the minutes? Is there a way that there is a link? Can I make my own spreadsheet based on this, or?
I sent all these details out to the whole committee 2 days ago.
Uh-huh.
So it should be in your email with all the statistics.
No, I have
Oh, you
the
have that?
reports, but
I'm
how
sorry,
do,
what are you asking?
how can I put them in the minutes so the public has a good view? As an appendix? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see we have one hand up from Christy Corley online. Christy, make your comment quickly, please. We have a lot to get through.
Yes, hello. I was just wondering the locations of those accidents. As you know, Hawthorne's has a meeting later this month. And it looks like they're doing some traffic reports right around the entrance to Hawthorne's. And one of their comments is there's very few accidents in 5 and below, so it's not a problem. And I'd like to know where the accidents are and what were the injuries. Because what we're trying to assess is Alpine Road for accidents of bicyclists. And if we're actually getting reports of those bicyclists, because I was told by one officer that if there's no blood, they don't report it. So can you clarify that? And it was right across from my house where a car hit a bicyclist coming down Alpine at the corner of Golden Oak and Alpine. So he broke his phone. He's off his bike and he chose not to go to the hospital, but it's still an accident. So I guess, can you clarify what you, when you report and where were most of those bike accidents, if there was 5?
Patrick, was that question clear to you? It was,
think it was-
under what circumstances do you report something as an accident?
Yeah, I think it's pretty multifaceted question. So like, if you go back to the collisions report, you can see I do put the locations in there, Alpine Road and Joaquin Road, where we're notified. On all my collision reports that I've submitted to Potomac Valley, they have the location. A lot of times the location will be an intersection and not like an exact location because it doesn't always have in a specific location unless it happens like in that driveway or something like that, or at a business. If the people decide not to notify the sheriff's office or call for law enforcement, obviously we are not going to have a report. So if people are, if a bicyclist and a car get hit and there's nobody is injured and they don't decide not to call, there's no damage, or even if there is damage, you can report an accident to your insurance company and we'll never know about it because it doesn't come to us. We only get notified if somebody calls us law enforcement and then we respond there to take an accident. A lot of times we respond to a call, we'll get out there on scene, and the person will indicate they don't want to report once we talk to them. That happens quite a bit. And then we don't take a report in that incident. So we're not
Okay,
managing.
so then the Portola Valley may not hear about it, but yeah, the person was injured. That is my concern. Can we put that in the requirements in Portola Valley, since we have a lot of bikers that we want everything written up?
That's not how those work, because people have the ability to state if they do or do not want a police report taken.
Yeah, that's just the nature of the beast, I'm
We
afraid,
can't
Christie.
mandate
I think
they take a report.
we've
Okay,
covered
I
this
did
before.
not get your reports because I'm not on that committee, and I guess they were submitted 2 days ago. So my request still, and I've asked about 3 times, is that it gets submitted so the public can get it for this meeting, so I can be looking at the
Christie,
report.
the statistics will appear in the next committee meeting, in the next committee minutes.
And Christy, I think I sent you the SWITTers reports before, and if I haven't done, you can go online and pull them off yourself.
I just want to get what the committee's looking at, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Okay, if there's nothing else for Sergeant Taylor today, I think we'll let you get on with your day. Thank you very much for your report today, and thank you for the improved reporting. I do like the new structure, so thank you for that.
And thank you guys. Let me know if you want something else added in there or a different format, and we can work on it together.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 6, which is a special item. This is a presentation and follow-on discussion from the City County Association of Governments of San Mateo County, C/CAG, on the local roadway safety plan, LSRP. This is a phase 2 outreach project, and I'd like to introduce, I think Jeff Lakeup, you're going to be making the presentation, is that correct?
Yes, good morning. Yeah, I'll kick it off. And hi everybody. My name is Jeff LeCap. I'm from San Mateo CCAG, City County Association of Governments of San Mateo County. We are the county transportation agency for the county, and we are developing a countywide local roadway safety plan. I'm here with Mike Alston from Kielson and Associates, the consulting team that's helping us develop this plan. And I also wanted to just recognize Eva Gay from the project team from CCAG staff, and also Sean Charpentier, our executive director from CCAG. So I think, Mike, if you want to share your screen, and we'll jump into the presentation. All right, next slide. Great. So just a little overview of the Countywide Local Roadway Safety Plan, or LRSP. And I just want to apologize, or just there's going to be a lot of acronyms in this presentation. So if there, feel free to stop me, or others if you have any questions. So the LRSP really sets a region-wide vision to advance advanced roadway safety, while also developing individual LRSPs for local agencies without one. One of the big reasons CCAG wanted to take on this plan was to really position all local agencies to be able to tap into Caltrans and US DOT or federal funding for safety projects. And out of the 21 jurisdictions in the county, 11 do not have an existing or ongoing safety plan meeting US DOT criteria, and that includes the town of Portola Valley. Next slide.
At that point, Jeff, if I may stop you, I do have a question. So you mentioned that 11 jurisdictions do not have a plan meeting US DOT criteria. Is that simply a criteria for meeting grant application, or is that something else related to procedure and requirements? Yeah,
so there's a to be eligible for US DOT funding, there needs to have a jurisdiction or agency needs to have a safety plan, and within that safety plan, there's a multiple criteria that the plan needs to meet in order to be eligible. And this upcoming slide will kind of break down what is needed within a safety plan.
Thank you for that. Please continue.
So just going down this list, first, I think the most important is really the partnership and stakeholder recommendations. We assembled an advisory group, not just with the 11 jurisdictions that don't have a safety plan, but with all 21, so that we are keeping them in the loop of our development. And really, this is really important because it provides local context that city staff can provide to CCAG. And obviously, with linking local plans such as the town's 2019 pedestrian safety study will help shape the individual plans for each jurisdiction. The LRSP is really data driven. It looks at countywide crash risk trends and emphasis areas. It prioritizes project locations for safety improvement and recommends, amongst other, in addition to policy recommendations, really a toolbox of systemic engineering countermeasures at these identified locations, and a safe system aligned recommendations as well. Next slide.
Thank you. If I may hold you there just for a second to be back. So in the context of your project here, where do you stand on that roadmap of items between 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5? Are we sort of at roughly position 2 here?
Oh, in terms of the current where we're at in the plan? Yeah. So we have gone through the crash analysis. We've prioritized, the upcoming slides will talk about that process. But we're currently at a point where project or priority locations have been identified for those 11 jurisdictions, and we're approaching a draft form of the plan.
All right, thank you.
All right, next slide. So again, this is the timeline. We started this effort back in the spring of 2023. We have the data analysis, which we'll get into shortly. We've had community engagement. We've had pop-up events at libraries and farmers markets along in the county, with a emphasis in locations where for those 11 jurisdictions. So we picked those, we targeted those areas. The review of LRSP projects and priorities are being reviewed by our local staff, and we are currently reviewing the drafts of the plan. Next slide. And I want to toss it over to Mike from Kittles and Associates to talk about the analysis.
Thanks, Jeff. So can I just understand from Howard or whoever's moderating how many minutes I have to keep presenting? I just want to make sure that I right size what I'm going to say.
Can you repeat that again, Mike?
Yeah, how many minutes do we have remaining on our presentation? Because there's a couple things to say, but I want to make sure I don't take up too much time.
So I made allowance in the timetable today for this to take up the remaining time as necessary.
Okay.
So on my agenda, it says any remaining items we have are subject to the time available. Please continue.
Okay, great. So before I dive into the details, I just want to double down on a couple things that Jeff said. So one is from a countywide perspective, we've really looked at data and crash analysis from countywide perspective. It actually ties into some of the comments that were just made about crash reporting. In some of the smaller jurisdictions in the county, there really aren't an abundance of crashes to do meaningful trend analysis. So we can do location analysis locally, and then we try to identify trends depending on the context within the county. And then the other piece that I want to emphasize that Jeff mentioned is partnership and stakeholder recommendations. So one of the things that there's USDOT funding criteria put in is to essentially have a plan that isn't just going to get published and live on a shelf. And so it's recommendations like, for example, coordinating with the local sheriff's department or local police department, which you all are clearly already doing, which is awesome. So with that out of the way, so one of the things I want to share that we've done is a countywide crash analysis and developed essentially a countywide what's called high injury network, which is an industry term that essentially represents within the county's roadway miles, what are the locations that have the highest crash frequency and severity? So we looked at that countywide by crash mode. So we split all the crashes over a 5-year period out into bicyclist involved, pedestrian involved, and then just motor vehicle involved. And there's essentially 2 segments within Portola Valley that pop up on that network. So Alpine Road and Portola Road. And so those countywide networks really represent the top, let's say 3 to 5% of crash frequency and severity within the county. So you might ask the question, does this mean that these are insanely dangerous places with an abundance of crashes? It doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means on a relative basis, these are where more and more frequent crashes have happened than in other locations.
Okay, if I may stop you and ask what is the source
Sure.
of your data for this, please?
Yeah, so we use TIMS data, which is a database provided by UC Berkeley. It's essentially the injury and fatal collisions from SWITers. So it's everything from those public databases.
Thank you.
So we identified 2 locations in Portola Valley that pop up on that network. And I want to just frame here, these are represented in green, indicating they're on that bicycle injury network. And so within the county, bike crashes tend to be a relatively low percentage of overall crashes, but within Portola Valley, they're higher than otherwise present in the county, just as a share of overall reported crashes. And so that's some countywide work we did. So you might ask, okay, well, what does that mean? So then one thing that Jeff mentioned that the plan is required to do is say, identify some priority locations. So we take that crash history and we take 2 other factors, and from a data perspective, try to identify where are some priority locations. So the first factor I just mentioned is crash history. So those lines that you just saw are going to be relevant in a second here. The second factor is social equity. So it's essentially asking the question using, again, USDOT indicators of disadvantaged neighborhoods and using countywide and Bay Area-wide indicators of disadvantaged neighborhoods, historically disadvantaged populations, where within the county are the locations that if we spend money, they would benefit those populations. That's the second criteria as an overlay. The third criteria, as I mentioned before, crash data can be sparse in some locations. So what we did is we identified systemic factors that are associated with frequency and severity. So those are things like higher speed roadways, unsignalized intersections, and there's also other priority factors, one of which is proximity to schools. So 3 factors that go into, hey, what are the priority locations? Crash history, social equity, and systemic factors. So again, working from that data-informed process, we identify draft locations to say, here's what data tell us. We have to blend that with local knowledge and community input to say, what are those locations? And again, just to pause and zoom back out before I share the next slide, the intention of this is to have a plan to work from. So in that sense, having a long list is helpful because it gives you a long list of priorities, but too long of a list and you're drowning in potential priorities. So really the goal is to say, where can we start to improve safety based on these factors? So with that, and I have to ask Howard, do folks have that table handout?
Yeah, I had the table, the basic table handout
Okay,
that I
cool.
passed in through each of the committee members here.
Great.
And I also had a stack available to the public also.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So with that, we have a map, an accompanying table to demonstrate what those factors pointed to within Portola Valley. And again, I mentioned those 2 lines, Alpine and Portola would be relevant in a second. So here they are again, right? And so that crash history piece, the systemic factors piece, weighs pretty largely in identifying potential locations. So you can think about what you're looking at in 2 ways. One, you can think about it as a number of intersection locations, or you can think about it as essentially those roadway segments. And so again, what this map is really showing is where crashes have happened. And then sometimes even in the absence of reported crashes, where we know those same factors exist. So if a crash happens at X location on Alpine, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's more likely to happen there than 2 intersections over on Alpine. The conditions are similar. The land use and intersection conditions are generally would generally correlate with outcomes, similar outcomes. So really what this is doing is blending crash history with what are the roadway and land use characteristics that we know are associated with crash risk. So the purpose of the presentation today is to share with you the progress and to share where we're heading. So again, important here, this says draft priority project lists. So from the CCAG perspective, we've done all the data analysis work. We've identified these priority locations based on the data. And then here today, we want to discuss this with you and then identify that the final plan needs to highlight locations, but it doesn't need to say, here's what we're going to do at those locations. So there is some flexibility for your town to say, here's a long list of locations. We need to X do further community engagement, or we already know what we need to do here, or hey, we've already done some work here. So again, the plan needs to highlight locations, but the town has flexibility to say, what is the next step for those locations? So I'll actually pause there. There's a lot of details that we could dive into. I really want to go in the direction that this body wants to go for the next few minutes. So I'll pause there. That's the last slide and open it up for discussion and questions. And I guess first, Jeff and Eva, anything else that you wanted to add onto what I said?
No, thank you, Mike. I will open the floor for questions in just a moment. I see Mary, you have a hand ready to go, and probably some committee members do as well. But we did have some opening comments in relation to the presentation here, and thank you for sharing some of these materials ahead of time with us. We do appreciate the chance to look at that. As you are aware, and I know now that you've referenced that, we do have the 2019 safety study in place that this committee has worked on over the last 5 years, and not just concluded a study, but also engaged with the town to make improvements in I think 10 locations, with 2 more still in the pipeline to be completed. So what we're hoping to avoid here is a disconnect between something from the county and then the town's local control or the local overview of the roadways, where I think we actually have a good grasp on a lot of the issues that are already covered by this. So it's understanding what the desired outcome of this study versus our study, and perhaps the, not conflict, but differing expectations from goals of the two different projects. So that's my comment. I think Howard and Paul, you probably also like to weigh in with some comments of your own.
Yeah, I think Ed summarized it pretty well. I think the context of this is that, number one, I'm appreciative of the county putting something together to meet requirements that make the county available funding available. We do have to also consider what are the chances of with the criteria that the town gets that funding also, because I'm concerned that if we come up with a list of items and basically have suggested improvements that we don't have funding for, which leads into kind of like our 2019 study where we did something we've been working on this since 2017, identifying intersections and improvements. And a lot of those, as per the list that Mike's list, you can see a lot of them overlap also. A lot of the other intersections it's almost every, majority of the intersections in town on Portola and Alpine. So I think, it's important for the BVTS and the committee to Alpine on it also, but just be aware that we did our own study also. And how we're going to meet the goals of the county. Part of that is also if we can list down or the intersections in the 2019 study also. I think we've done about 9 intersections a couple of years ago that we've improved. That's on the list also. And I believe there's 4 more to go. So 2 of those have SMTA funding. The other 2 are the the vehicle feedback signs that don't have an identified funding yet, that this program may or may not help with, depending on the scoring criteria. That's all I had. I'll bring
Howard,
it over to Paul. Go ahead.
May I just respond to 2 things really quickly that I forgot to mention that I think would be very helpful? Is that okay before Paul jumps in?
Yes.
Okay, so first was the viability of getting funding. I'm glad you mentioned that. Actually, let me start with the 2019 study. I completely neglected to mention the 2019 study, even though you have the handout in there. And so I think it's perhaps helpful and a hindrance that we did this work separately and kind of came to similar results. So a key question for you all as you look at that table and say, wow, okay, different analysis, largely the same results, is do we truncate the list? So in other words, do we say, look, this is too many, we've got to prioritize, let's slim it down to something shorter like the 2019 list. And so that's, we can have that discussion. And then the second thing is the viability of funding that Howard just mentioned. So there's 2 sources this opens you up to be eligible for. One is USDOT and one is Caltrans. So the USDOT has social equity as a heavy component in it. And frankly, the town of Portola Valley on its own would likely not be competitive in that for reasons that you all probably already appreciate and understand. The second source is Caltrans, which operates from a purely quantitative crash benefit to cost ratio perspective. And I do think the types of things that you just mentioned, Howard, speed feedback signs, other signs, low cost countermeasures are perfect for what we're looking at here. And so that's just one thing I wanted to mention.
Thank you. Howard, do you have any response to that?
No, I think, we always keep looking for grants, and, they're harder for a small town like us because we're so rural. But other than that, I'll just hand it over to Paul. Thank you very much. Paul is our consultant town traffic engineer, and he's been helping us a lot with this and going through the list, and also performed the town's 2019 pedestrian safety study. Has been very involved. Thank you.
Hi, great to be here. Thank you very much, Ed and committee. Paul Krupka, transportation consultant, civil engineer and traffic engineer. A couple things I wanted to add. I think Ed gave a good preamble here. What CCAG is doing in bringing to the town's attention is something that I think is very important in the context of collaborating and improving safety. I know from experience that the fundamental tenet of this committee is safety. And indeed, this committee is charged with advising the council on these matters. And so indeed, this is the place to start, as Mike Alston put it. Where do we start? In my view, this project, the LRSP, gives the town, this committee and the town an opportunity to integrate what has been done carefully and completely into the fabric and the end result that CCAG is putting together here. And the end result of potential funding can be seen in the way that Howard represented it. We're a small town. We will look for funding when we need it. But in a larger sense, you've got the collective CCAG membership, if you will, supporting matters of funding pursuit. So it's a good thing. I think what you're seeing today is the fact that as Mike said, these overlap. We've done a lot of work together. You're doing a lot of good work right now. I think the charge of this committee is really to give some reasonable advice to staff to move forward. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul, for those comments. Much appreciated. I think I'd like to open this up out now to our committee for some comments and then over to the public comment as appropriate. Thank you. Angela, you have a hand.
Okay, the way the CCAG grants usually work is that there's a plan for the county applies for the grant, and then it gets offered, or CCAG gets the grant, and then it's sent out to other people. So it's quite likely that if you have a plan for the county, that then the federal government gives you some money, which is then spread out locally to the towns. And then on that town, it'll say, do we have a local road safety plan? So I see two layers of this local road safety plan. And the county has to have one because otherwise they won't get the money that they can then pass on to us. As far as local road safety plan, we're almost there. So where we're very poor is identifying the stakeholders, but we could probably write that up pretty quickly. Then the next thing is using the safety data. We have pulled these SWITTERS reports for years and the TIMS reports. So we know all that. I have them on my computer. I've handed them out to people on occasion. So we have that data. Choose proven solutions. Paul Krupke and Howard have worked very hard on this. Choosing proven solutions, which we believe is things like lighting our crosswalks and things like that. And so implementing solutions. So I think if we put all this together, we can very quickly have, where we're weak is on implementation because we're sort of short-staffed and never have enough time to implement quickly compared with some of the other jurisdictions in the Bay Area. So, I think we could put together a local road safety plan very well from what we have for Portola Valley, and I don't think it would take more than a couple of weeks.
I do have a question.
Thank you, Angela. I'll get to everybody in turn. Caroline, please go ahead.
I echo what Angela said. I think we have all the data and you're just reinforcing the summary that we have. So we appreciate that. How much money are we talking about? And this question is to Mike.
When you say how much money, do you mean is available in grant funding?
Yes. That's a good starting point. Yes.
So a lot. USDOT has awarded for individual jurisdictions or counties, millions or tens of millions of dollars for large projects. I think that's not the purview of like what we're talking about here with the town, right? With your locations, we're not talking about major road reconstructions or that sort of thing. But that is available within a USDOT funding package. From Caltrans, which again, I want to emphasize, I really think the town could be competitive for Caltrans. it ranges up to a couple $1 million, and there's actually small package opportunities for things like crosswalk striping and signage improvements. And in fact, I will say in many cases, you can get up to $80,000 non-competitively from Caltrans's HSIP program, where it's essentially if you haven't received money from their program in the last couple cycles, you can identify pedestrian or bike locations and they'll give it to you. Does that help, or is there more detail that you'd
Yeah.
like?
I think
I can say one more thing. I'm on the CCAC committee, which is just reviewing grants right now for some things. And I would say that one of the things is we heard at our last meeting was that Caltrans is opening up their criteria and will have a lot more money. And so it is important for us, just so we can check the box and say, do we have a bicycle and pedestrian safety plan? Do we have a local road safety plan? Yes, we just need to have those things written down and then we can check them off.
Thank you, Angela.
I have one more question on the funding.
Very last thing, and then I must get to everybody else.
What's the turnaround? So let's say that we built the local road safety plan. We have already a safety study plan, and we submit that to Caltrans. What's the the turnaround to get the money?
Yeah, so to pick Caltrans as a quick example, they do their cycles every 2 years. They'll have one this summer. They open the call, let's say April. The application deadline's August. They select by October, and then I think they award the funds the following year for you to start spending, and they require you to spend it within 2 years or something like that. So if we're talking, sitting here today on February 2024, if all goes well, you might have the money in hand from Caltrans in a year.
Okay, thank you. I know Mary Hofty, our council liaison, had a question for the panel. So please go ahead, Mary.
I think I'm commenting as a citizen. We have some special stakeholders in Portola Valley. You could call them underrepresented wildlife corridors and the existence of wildlife in our area. I don't think they report the incidences of their deaths, but there are many, many animal deaths on our road. Something to consider. Hopefully the county is aware of this because you have so many rural, the county and many organizations are putting a huge amount of money into opening up these corridors. They got to have some place to live. So the other, of course, less socially acceptable minority is mounted horse people. They are susceptible to both the fear aspect of biking and also the fear aspect of cars, and they involve elderly and disabled and child users.
Thank you, Mary. Good points. Christy, you had a comment to make.
Yes, I think it's important to take the county reports and add them to our own reports. Our own reports are 2019 and any updated reports we would appreciate. I just drove here from my home to get the report that Howard was talking about from CCAG. I think this should go into the agenda because we can get it day of if you just add it in and then we can read it from home. So I drove down here to get that report and I prefer to stay at home if I could. I agree with Mary. Well, when I was driving over here, there was no turn lane into the Priory, for example. So the Priory changed its entrance to another entrance, which surprised me. And all these cars were turning in front of me without a turn lane. So we have to fix that if it's not fixed, because that has been changed recently where they take a loop off of another road, Gambier Road, and they don't go in and out of their main road. So there's an example right there. We're going to have some accidents there if we don't fix it. I do agree with wildlife crossing. I would like to see more signs. I presented signs to this committee and they've not been interested in putting up wildlife crossing signs. And we need them. We have lots of workers coming in and out of this town that have no idea that there's many animals crossing roads. And I mean mountain lions crossing roads, deer, dogs, you name it. But, you know, going to the grocery store, we can see a mountain lion. So I guess I'm all for getting, I know the committee got all the reports before the meeting, but I think the public should get the reports before the meeting. So we can sit at home and analyze the reports. I know that the town council can add reports 72 hours early. I would like to see this committee also do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. I think I'd like to start wrapping this up if at all possible. Angela, one comment from you.
I've got one more comment for Mike. One of your criteria is the gradient of the road. You haven't got that. And in Portola Valley, we've got a lot of steep hills, and that's one of the causes of accidents, cyclists coming fast downhill. So I think you know, gradient is something you might want to add to your criteria.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I think one interesting question from me, and perhaps I'd like to circulate this round through Howard and to Paul as well, is this does represent an interesting, potentially useful opportunity for us to enhance the existing safety study that we did. One question is, what timeline do we have to be able to qualify for this? It seems like time is short to get our LSRP or local road safety plan agreed and in place, or whether we can modify what we have in the existing study to comply with that. And second, then what would be the working procedure going forward to identify and then manage projects in the no man's land between county management of the funding and the grant applications and local control over the designs and the implementation and the choice of locations? I hope I stated that clearly. Howard, perhaps you'd like to comment to that a little further as well. It is something we discussed offline.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that right now. I think that there's to satisfy the county's LSRP right now, because there's a lot to digest here in the report. And I do want to answer Christy Corley's question about the handout that I submitted. We just got that. It was just created, so it was going to be part of the presentation, so we didn't have it in advance. So once again, it's a sudden handout that to provide for the committee to have the information, and it's at the back of the room too. So once again, it was just created by the consultant, the county's consultant. So I think right now, as for the grant, I want to speak of the grants. I want to touch base with Mike, because some of these are very competitive. They take time to put together. I don't want to make it seem like the money just automatically comes. From the grants I've seen, they are competitive. But I think as for digesting the list, that's going to take some time, and our timeline is not going to match their timeline. I think what is the solution to that is, one solution is to utilize the 2019 report. And I don't know what the committee is going to think about to alpine in on that. From the words I've heard, it sounds like that's what we should do is utilize the 2019
Yeah,
report.
we just put it in a binder with a cover that says local road safety plan. I mean, I'm serious. I'm on the CCAG committee that reviews and gives out these grants, right? So I'm on the other side of it to a certain extent. And I can tell you, you only have to look at the video from the last CCAG meeting, and you can see what other people presented when they were putting in bids for grants, okay? And as Mike said, we don't have a good chance at the moment because of some of the check boxes you have to cross. But we could have in the future, because Caltrans is opening things up. Timelines sort of there for doing stuff. So I can tell you, where we're weak, and we're weak on identifying stakeholders, and we're weak on implementing solutions. We're pretty good at writing up what the solution should be.
Thank you, Angela. So I think in this case, the county or Mike would be putting together, would incorporate our 2019 study, correct? If a solution was needed right away to meet the timeline, that they would be good. Paul, do you have anything to add?
Christie, one final comment and briefly, please.
Yeah, I noticed Hawthorne's 79 acres is a park coming into our town. There's a meeting the third Thursday of this month, and they will be deciding on the parking at that time. I noticed that traffic monitors, about 5 of them were put out yesterday. I believe it was for Hawthorne's, and I would hope our town is working with that traffic study as well as CK traffic study. So we can't be all working in our own silos for the same town. We need to put all the results together to learn about traffic and safety in our town. Thank you.
Thank you, Christie. I think I'd like to open this up for any final comments and wrapping up, and then we'll go ahead. I know Howard would like to say something.
Yeah, I just want to also point out, I mean, Mike indicated on one of the slides that the accident data was from 5 years ago. And once again, those are the same kind of accident data that we, Paul Krupka, and the town looked at also to implement items at the intersections, the 9 intersections or so far. So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question for the team. Would it be possible that you can send a presentation to our committee so we can distribute that for the public? Thank you.
Yeah, we could send that out.
And a clarifying question, I thought you said the data, you know, we have the traffic study of 2019, but what you identified in 23 and 24, where is that data coming from? How old is that data?
It's 2018 to 2022.
Okay, so we have COVID in there, so, all right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We would appreciate a copy of that presentation. That would be helpful for the committee. I think the next step would be to add this onto our next agenda as the formulating our pedestrian safety study into the LSRP and what will be needed to do that. And I think probably run through that fairly quickly. I don't know if that allows for the timelines to be met.
To the chair, can we make a subcommittee or is that for the next agenda?
There's no reason not to make a subcommittee, but I think it's a sort of a whole committee involvement.
Well, perhaps the subcommittee can already
I think
combine.
the subcommittee could write the report, and I might suggest that the committee that Pat and I are on, that we do this instead of trying to stick signs up, because I don't think we can do it without a plan and funding.
I would recommend that also.
Well, one thing I don't know, Mike, if you can opine on the timeline is, I mean, because from what I heard, it sounds like we're in agreement that we can use the locations for the 2019 study just to meet the timeline, and then we can continue working on this, it sounds like.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
agree. I think, and I'm sorry, I forget who keeps making the point about meeting the criteria, that approach would meet the criteria from the USDOT. And the key would be that you have a lively body here to carry that forward. So we could just say, here's our current locations, here's what you should do next, and put that in the plan. So I see a way forward there.
Okay, I think then with the remainder of the committee's agreement on allowing that subcommittee to take that work forward, that is a good path. So I would certainly approve that.
I agree with that also, Ed.
Take a show of hands from the remaining committee members. I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. And then we'll take that path. I think that probably ends the discussion on this item for today. But I think you may have one last thing to say.
I just wanted to clarify that motion is essentially was to use the 2019 locations and then continue with the subcommittee, correct? Thank you. Mike and Jeff, does that satisfy your concern?
Yeah, I'll let Jeff have the last word, but yeah, this has been very productive, and Howard will definitely be following up with you.
Yeah, just echoing what Mike said. Thank you all for your feedback and great discussion. Thanks.
And thank you for taking the time to present to us today and discuss your project. It's interesting, and I think we have opportunities here to make that a constructive collaboration. So thank you. In line with my comment in the agenda, I think we have reached our allotted time. And so the other agenda items will be pushed to our March meeting. There are no further matters arising, so I call the adjournment of today's meeting and announce that our next regularly scheduled meeting will be on the 7th of March at 8:15. Thank you very much, everybody. Very constructive today.
Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, so, all right, in case you haven't seen it, you can switch it to your phone.
Right, thanks.